Hello, I'm a student at University of the Current Word, and I'm here to talk about financial decision making. I've come to I decided to do this financial decision making because of how many Americans are affected by financial difficulties, whether it be because of overspending, not spending within their means, or having runaway expenses that end up creeping up on them when they least expect it. An introduction to financial planning is an introduction to the very basics of how to manage your finances. From managing spending habits to saving up money to saving up enough money within a 4 to 5 month time window that you accrue enough money that you can begin to invest in stocks and think about protecting your assets through legal means like tax avoidance, getting tax breaks, getting all the papers that you would normally use to protect your assets and not have to pay as much taxes as you normally would have to. Personal finance is not the most riveting topics. It's something that usually people don't like talking about money, and if they do like talking about money, they usually like spending a lot of it, which is why a lot of the time 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, meaning that they are barely living, they're just living paycheck to paycheck. They spend their money at food, they spend their money on, they barely are able to pay their rent, and because of that, they tend to not be able to ever splurge, never able to live outside of their means. Now, this tends to happen to millennials and Gen Zers the most. Not only they're the most affected both in terms of income, but also in terms of just generally not being able to live, and because of that, financial anxiety. In 2023, it was cited that 63% of Americans say that money was the greatest source of stress for them, even more so than other stressors, though it does seem to have gone down from 2022. Typically, you're just people who are living within their means or living paycheck to paycheck, just they're in a rat race. They can't escape. They can't ever get a raise. They can't earn the income that they so desired, basically. Typically, the first step of financial success and learning is knowing where your money goes. Typically, this means just running a monthly expense budget, learning how much you're making per month on average, or just telling up month annual expenses or your yearly income. Sorry. Expenditures being subscriptions, leaks, and mindless spending that you absentmindedly do. This is typically meaning that you just want to learn what you're spending all of your money on and make sure where you're putting your money is actually where you want it to be going. When you build up some emergency, once you've gotten your finances in order, you want to be able to build up some money and save for some emergency savings. Typically, you want to save over 4 to 5 months worth of your income in like a little storage so that you can have money for a rainy day, or like if you get in an accident, you get into a car crash, that you're able to actually afford and pay for it. It's also very good to learn about your monthly expenses since a lot of people tend to underestimate just how much they spend. Maybe they're spending a little bit more, maybe they're spending a little bit less than they think they are. Otherwise, and they're not spending the money on things they should be spending stuff on. To fix this, you can typically just automate your expenses, though I personally wouldn't do this, mainly because I like automate exactly where I'm spending my money, and if I do automate it, that means he obviously is gonna not need my input. And this is true. Obviously, everyone watching this is human, meaning that you're gonna make human mistakes. You're gonna keep on paying for it, even though mechanically you probably shouldn't. Typically, you can solve this by having everything be automated, and then if it's automated, you don't really like automatic, meaning like all your bills are automatically paid, and then once you start doing that, all of your money can go wherever you want it to go. Because once you've automated all of your essentials out of the equation, now you're just left with money that you can spend or invest and just be better off. Now, if you're living within your expenses, then obviously that's great. You're on the road to success. You can store it for a rainy day or think of investing it in a stock market or a penny or bond stocks, all other financial means that would increase your portfolio, make your money work for you in the way. If you can't, if you aren't living within your means, then you may want to think about budgeteering, thinking of how you're going to go about doing that. Basically, you should start with only saving 500 a month. If you can't save more than that, then yeah, you then you may want to go back to the previous step and think about your budget, think about your expenses, how that's going to affect your life. Obviously, having a goal orientated mindset is good for everyone. It helps everyone and allows people to budget budget themselves. Obviously, once you've had that safety barrier of 4 to 5 months worth of income or 4 to 5 months worth of expenses, either one works, honestly, is that your money should never really be idle. It's nice to look at your money in your bank account, but it's also not earning you anything. Especially if you have a lot of money and you're not really using it for expenses, obviously you should be automating it. Um, as said, after saving 4 to 5 months worth of expenditures for an emergency fund, just think about making an investment portfolio. Now, to the extent to which you make that portfolio is completely up to you and completely up to how big you want it. If you wanted to, you could manage your portfolio yourself. Makes it a lot more flexible, meaning you can react more quickly to the market and make sure that you're in control of your portfolio. But if you want a bigger one, obviously you should hire a financial expert to deal with that and not really have you deal with that. Obviously, you want to be, if you have that big emergency fund, you should only start building up an emergency fund once you have once you've repaid your debt and high interest loans. Now, obviously, mortgages are completely different, but debts are typically parasites. They eat away at your money, and typically they're never going to get better. So you want to pay them off as soon as you possibly can. Obviously, credit card loans, credit card debt is going to be a real penny pincher for you. They're going to eat away at your wealth. They're going to eat away at your emergency fund. So you want to prioritize a snowball versus avalanche type approach where you're slowly getting rid of all of your highest interests first versus a snowball approach, which is working killing off all of the small balances that you can get in one fell swoop. And after you pick one of these approaches, never stop. Obviously, once you've paid your debt, you can go back to the previous steps of building up a portfolio and making your money work for you. And obviously, anything over 7% interest is urgent. When you're not managing it, you just obliterate it. Don't give it time to parasite off your money, bleed you dry. Obviously, you should be reading your contracts. I know this is typically not a lot of people, something that not a lot of people read their contracts. They just sign the red dotted line and then they go off with their day. But obviously, you and should read your contracts, and you really should care about what it is you're signing. Obviously, this is mainly in the form of this presentation. I'm talking more about contracts that accrues 0% interest but hide fees or buy now pay later. Basically, contract agreements that look good on paper until you read the fine print and learn that eventually every contract is there to eat away at you unless you've read it carefully and you recognize that what you're doing is what you need to be doing. Obviously, impulse spending is a habit that most of us fall into to the point where we inevitably are going to spend on some luxury items, even if we haven't built an emergency fund, and especially if we haven't. If we're in the mood or we get peer pressured into buying something, even though we know we shouldn't be buying it, this can typically be avoided by implementing the 72-hour rule, meaning that you just simply wait 72 hours or roughly 3 days before you make any expensive purchase. Even $100 above expenses should be 72-hour ruled. Obviously, there is times where it'll be a sale or you won't be back before the thing goes away. So obviously you shouldn't fall into a FOMO type mindset or fear of missing out type mindset where you buy something simply because you know you're going to lose it. Obviously, if such things should occur, you should keep a cravings list or like a wish list so that you know if you want to spend money on something or splurge off, you know exactly what you want to buy rather than no looking around and just buy the first thing that catches your fancy. Back to our investments slide. When you're investing in the stock market, invest in it like you're not some 4D chess maker. You should really just buy low, sell high, simple as. You don't really need to think or you don't need to be a financial genius to make the right decisions. Buy low when a stock is low and then sell high when you think the time is right to sell. Typically, you shouldn't invest in crypto. Crypto type scams are very common in this day and age and can very much mess you up if you're using expenses that you really shouldn't be using. Like you're not even using your emergency expenses, you're using like your college fund or your your son or daughter's college 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 bank account that you're pump and dumps are very common where people pump money into it, hype it up, and then immediately dump all their stocks as soon as the wind goes one way. Obviously, people are hyping it up, people get pulled in with FOMO. Again, makes its appearance. And generally, you can't time the market, you can't beat the market. And Anyone who claims that they can is either lying or is a genius more than you or I. And like said, you aren't a genius, so just buy low, sell high. What else can I say? Now we talked about managing a emergency funds, and much like other things in life, should be calorie counted to the point of just saving more funds. Go 4 to 5, 3 to 6 of core expenses. Obviously, you should be paying for food, insurance, bills, rent. Just do what you have to do to survive. And emergency funds are especially poignant as obviously we all try to go through life as safely as we possibly can, though typically if it isn't going to save you, if it can save you to save a little, then obviously you should do it. If you can't do that, save $500 a month, and by the end of that 6 months, that'll be $3,000, which won't help you if you get into a heavy accident after a replace car, but it can help in situations where you can't work or you're not able to work as much time as you previously were able to previously. Now, lifestyle creep is a fascinating concept where as you earn more money, you justify to yourself that you should spend more money to that you've earned because you get a raise, you get a new job with a higher salary, and because of that, you start bleeding more and more money to the point where you're losing just as much money as you're making. Now, this can really catch up to you, especially if you're caught into a situation where you're earning that money not for a long time, but you're for a very short time. What ends up happening is you're gonna end up feeling just as broke as you felt when you're making a lower salary. So typically, experts say you should keep your lifestyle 1 to 2 years behind your income level in order to both be able to pay off any loans, pay off, and just make your life better. Only problem is there is another much scarier entity that wants your money. Obviously, tax evasion is a crime, and you should really pay your taxes. That being said, there's obviously some ways to how do I say this? Avoid having to pay as much taxes as you normally would have, which will brings to taxes and how to avoid paying as big of taxes as you normally would be. Learn to learn to use tax reduction to your advantage. Typically, this means just simple 401ks, Roth IRAs, HSAs, which allows you to negate some of the taxes that you normally would have been paying, and also to recognize your tax bracket, meaning that you should always know where you are on the tax scale to either avoid being taxed more than you make, than you know you make, or to know the benefits of marriage, of obviously using some tax avoidance strategies to make yourself smarter, safer, richer, and avoid and save you thousands of dollars in expenses. Now that's the conclusion of this presentation. Remember always to spend within your balance and means, and make sure to always have an emergency fund. As always, emergency funds are usually the best thing you can do for yourself. And if you take anything out of this, just save money. Make sure to record your expenses, budget yourself, learn to be a little penny pincher when it comes to the worst of things, and remember, never let lifestyle creep take a hold of your life, and to always take a gamble when it comes to saving. See you later.